This lecture is about circumstances that take the form of adverbials. In a clause, circumstances tell us about any more information. So the probe question is, any more information? Such as when, where, how, what like, who with, or for what reason. Let's have a look at some circumstances. Here are some clauses from The Wind in the Willows. "Oh, I know, so it is," replied the rat evasively. "Oh, I quite understand," said the rat soothingly. "Old toad," said the rat, laughing heartily. "Poor old mole," said the rat kindly. "No, it isn't," cried the rat indignantly. "I don't care," said the rat doggedly. All of the words in blue there tell us how the character is saying. Saying is a saying process. And the blue, the circumstance, tells us how the character is saying it. If you want to find a circumstance in a clause, you've got to start with the process. We all know that. So find the process and then find the participant and then ask, is there any more information? Let's have a look at this. The kid ended up in hospital. What's happening? The process ended up. Who ended up? The kid. Where did the kid end up? Where? That probe question is part of the circumstance probe questions. And in hospital is the answer. That's a circumstance. He was admitted yesterday. So what's going on in this clause? What's happening? Was admitted. That's the process. Who was admitted? He. And when was he admitted? Yesterday. There's the more information. When. And that's a circumstance. There are lots of types of circumstances, such as place, for the probe question where, time for the probe question when, extent, manner, cause, accompaniment, contingency, role, angle, matter. The best thing to do is have a look at the grammar summary table for circumstances in grammar and meaning, and when you're looking at a clause, see if you can work out which one matches the same sort of meaning from a category in that table. We can have multiple circumstances in one clause, like this. I found an old penny on the footpath this morning. The process is found. Who found? I. What did I find? An old penny. Right, so process found, participants I, and an old penny. Now, is there any more information? On the footpath, that's some more information. Have a think about the probe question. What you do is you think, what's the question? The answer is on the footpath. The question for on the footpath is, where? Have a look at this morning. This morning's the answer. What's the question? When? Answer, this morning. So, on the footpath is where, this morning is when. Where is a place, circumstance, when is a time, circumstance. Circumstance is the function within the clause. In a clause you can have a participant, a process or a circumstance. A circumstance is realised or takes the form of an adverbial. Now, adverbial, we call it adverbial, not just adverb, because it could be an adverb, but it could be a preposition phrase or even a noun. The job of all of these is to tell us, give us more information and answer all those probe questions like when, where, what like, to what extent, with whom, the extra information. So, an adverbial includes an adverb, like neatly or happily. It includes a preposition phrase. Preposition phrase starts with a little word that is like a location word, like in or above, followed by a noun group. in the air, above the clouds. And an adverbial can also be a noun, like yesterday. See all these adverbials? These are adverbs. Here, let's talk about preposition phrase finally and in detail. Prepositions express a time or space relationship between two people or things. Have a look at all of these words. They're all prepositions. At, of, to, by, from, inside, beneath, through, near to, out of, next to. See, sometimes the prepositions have two words together that make the meaning, like on top of. So, a preposition phrase is a preposition plus a noun group. In the air, on the table, under that blue box, besides these three reasons, until tomorrow, over a barrel, through the looking glass. That's a preposition phrase. Let's have a look at this text. Let's read it through first, and I've highlighted in blue all the circumstances, and just see if we can work out what type they are. Once upon a time, in the middle of a dark forest, there lived a small girl named Jane. She lived in an old tumble-down house with her father, her brother, and 3 cats. One day, Jane's father went into the forest to cut some wood. By nightfall, her father had not returned. Jane and her brother decided to look for him. After 2 long hours, they heard a voice in the distance. It was their father. His foot was trapped under a fallen log. They lifted the branch carefully and helped their father up. Once upon a time, the probe question is, when? In the middle of a dark forest, the probe question is, where? In an old tumble-down house, where? With her father, her brother, and 3 cats, who with? One day, when? Into the forest, where? By nightfall, when? After 2 long hours, when? Well, it's sort of more like how long for, right? After how long? In the distance, where? Under a fallen log, where? Carefully, how? So all of these circumstances are really important to teach your students when they're learning to write, because they give us so much more valuable information about what's going on. Another thing to know about circumstances is I've ruined my big surprise, haven't I, by flicking too far ahead. Why is a circumstance like a TARDIS? Because it can go anywhere. Usually, in a clause, a circumstance can move around into different spots. That's how you know it's a circumstance. For example, Tom crawled through the fence and into the park. You could say, through the fence and into the park, Tom crawled. Sure, it does sound a bit literary and it's not the way we would speak, but it still makes sense. Here's one. During the first part of the century, they used timber for housing. That circumstance there, during the first part of the century, we can move that around and put it at the end of the clause. They used timber for housing during the first part of the century. The bird ate the seed quickly. Quickly is the circumstance. We can put that at the beginning. Quickly, the bird ate the seed. Let's look at types of circumstances. In a recount that retells events, what kind of circumstances can you see? Here we go. James Cook was born on 27th of October 1726 in a small village near Middlesbrough in Yorkshire. At the age of 17, Cook moved to the coast, settling in Whitby and finding work with a coal merchant. In 1755, Cook enlisted in the Royal Navy, serving in North America. In 1789, blah, blah, blah. Endeavour arrived in Tahiti in April 1769, blah, blah, blah. How about if I throw you a few of these circumstances and you think about what type they are? On 27th of October, at the age of 17, in 1755, in 1769. What types are those? They're all time circumstances, aren't they? They answer the question when. So therefore, when you're teaching a recount, you need to teach students about all the ways we can talk about time to help to retell events from the past. Here's a different genre. This one's a procedure. What types of circumstances do we have here? I'll read you out the method. In a bowl, mix flour and sugar. Beat in the egg and then mix slowly until batter is smooth and lump-free. In a hot pan or flat grill, brush butter over cooking surface and carefully pour 1/4 cup measures for each pancake. When large bubbles form on the surface, flip over and cook until lightly golden on the other side. All right, I'm going to give you some circumstances. In a bowl. Questions where? Beat in the egg and then mix. Here comes a circumstance. Slowly. Slowly is how? A manner. A manner circumstance. Until batter is smooth and lump-free. Let's look at the method number 2. Beat in the egg and milk slowly. Slowly is a circumstance of manner, which tells us how to pour it in. Number 3, in a hot pan or flat grill. That's a circumstance that tells us where we're supposed to do this work. In a hot pan or flat grill. So therefore we know in a procedure, the circumstances, they're not telling us about things that happened in the past. They're telling us where to do things and how to do them. What about an information report? This is another genre that we commonly find in schooling. Here's an information report about sailing boats. The world's first sailing boats probably sailed about 5,000 years ago in the Mediterranean Sea and along the River Nile in Egypt. They were built by the ancient Egyptians and had solitary square sails on tall wooden masts. Their hulls were made of wood and they were steered by a large wooden oar at the stern. Now, these information report type genres, the purpose is to classify and describe things in the world. So let's have a look at the circumstance. First clause has a circumstance about 5,000 years ago. That's a when circumstance, isn't it? Because it tells us when they sailed. The next part of the clause tells us where they sailed. Where? In the Mediterranean Sea, along the River Nile in Egypt. That's a preposition phrase, along the River Nile in Egypt. In the Mediterranean Sea, that's a preposition phrase. Actually, in Egypt is a preposition phrase too. About 5,000 years ago, another preposition phrase. So these examples show how we use preposition phrases all the time as circumstances that tell us when and where things happen and what are they like. So this shows that the types of circumstances are important when we're teaching different genres or text types, because each text type has its own type of circumstances that it uses. And the more you know about the types of circumstances, the more power you can give to your students in how they can construct meaning in their writing, and also what they're supposed to be looking for when they're doing reading of various genres. Now you can have a go at all the activities to do with circumstances in your grammar and meaning textbook.